Okay, shut up. I want to talk about Mean Girls. Now that I have your attention, I want to talk about Hadestown. Only if I'm going to get to Mean Girls. We're going to get to Mean Girls. Hadestown is a Broadway musical based on the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. And one really important element of this version of the story is that the story itself is being retold over and over again, both in the sense that people have been sharing and reimagining this tale for over 2,000 years, and in the very literal sense that at the ending, the actors come back and start doing the beginning again. And even though the ending can never change, or maybe it can, I'm not a Greek poet, or whoever made that Hades video game where they're all hot bisexual anime characters, even though the ending can never change, the story keeps repeating because the beginning and middle are also important and can provide hope for the characters and those who watch them. So it's essentially a big Groundhog Day loop, but instead of doing a bunch of wacky hijinks to try and get out of it, they're just being in love and hungry. So, Mean Girls. Even if you haven't seen the movie, I'm sure you've heard some of the discourse surrounding it. Oh, why would they remake a movie like Mean Girls? Oh no, it's not a remake. It's an adaptation of the Broadway musical, which in turn is an adaptation of the original movie. Well, I'm here to tell you, it's none of those things. Mean Girls, every version of it, is a Hadestown style time loop where all of the characters are stuck. All details of the story may change as it repeats itself, but repeat itself it will. Now, these characters in the newest version are dangerously close to escaping, but not if Lindsay Lohan has anything to say about it. So why is this happening? In Hadestown, our narrator is Hermes, and he, along with the Fates, seem to have the ability to not alter any events, but to initiate these time loops and help our characters through them. So who is initiating the time loop in this story? I believe it is the original Katie Heron, now disguised as the mathlete moderator, played by Lindsay Lohan. And why would she create this never-ending cycle for herself and her loved ones? Well, in Hadestown, as I've said, Hermes and the Fates help restart the story because the beginning and middle make the ending worth living through again. In Mean Girls, I think it's the inverse. OG Katie is recreating the year-long events of the story so that she can get back to the end, the best night of her life. The climax of every version of Mean Girls involves Katie making a triumphant return from temporary pariahhood, winning the mathlete competition, being crowned spring fling queen, making up with her friends via a rousing speech and breaking stuff, and finally face smashing her crush Aaron Samuels. That's going to be a tough night to beat, even if your life goes relatively well. And the OG Katie is a millennial in the mid-aughts, set to enter adulthood just as a fun little recession is rearing its head. Imagine being a gifted kid who was taught growing up that she could expect a certain level of success and stability if she just worked hard and applied herself, now dealing with the realities of burnout and a completely decimated job market. I mean, I don't have to imagine, but maybe you do. OG Katie's life is at best lackluster compared to the shenanigans of her high school life, especially that one night. So somehow, be it through the power of musical theater or Satan or something in between that eternal dichotomy, Katie is able to trap her previous glory in a repeating cycle for her to observe and enjoy and make little fourth wall breaking quips about. All she has to do is trap everyone in there with her. But not all the characters in her little maze are equally helpless or ignorant. First, we have the chorus. Most of the extraneous high schoolers are our equivalent of the Fates. They are here to comment on the action and egg our main characters on. Realistically, that's why they're out there making TikToks about their fellow students like they're celebrities instead of astrology or drinking bath water or why Rachel Zegler is bad for existing. They're vehicles for storytelling, and they know it. This is basically confirmed when one of them talks about fighting over the dance count in a previous musical number. For the main characters, most are completely oblivious to their plight. And I think that is because they are not the originals. I believe the main players, who aren't just decor like the chorus, but important parts of Katie's experience, can escape the time loop if they become self-aware. Once that happens, they are replaced by new versions of themselves. That's why OG Katie can't participate in her own story, only observe it from the sidelines. So, let's talk about the characters that have been stuck in the time loop for the longest. That is Miss Norbury and Mr. Duval. Fans of the original film will immediately recognize that Tina Fey and Tim Meadows have returned to play the part they originated 20 years ago. But these characters haven't been static this whole time. They are actually evolving. In the original film, there is a delightfully awkward sexual tension between these two characters. And in this film, it's revealed that they are now in a committed relationship. Mr. Vall in the original says he did not leave the South Side in order to pull teen girls off each other. And in this film, he states that he did not go to grad school for the same reason. Most people might assume that this is the new writers trying to be more sensitive about what a black educator's background might be before becoming an authority figure in a wacky teen comedy. But I think both of these statements are true. Somewhere between the first and the last movie, Mr. Duvall just got his master's. Their lives are allowed to progress as long as they are still playing their parts in this eternal story. You can tell Miss Norbury is actually closer to self-awareness than Mr. Duvall. She's got several quips throughout the film that suggest she knows she and everyone else are being observed and expected to act a certain way. Meanwhile, poor Mr. Duvall doesn't seem to question the fact that he's been wearing the same arm brace for 20 years. And if Mr. Duvall is the soul most lost in the time loop, the time soup, having never been replaced once in all this time, which character has been replaced the most? Gretchen. She's definitely been dealt the worst hand. Most of the characters have their ups and downs throughout the months that the story spans, but Gretchen spends all that time being bullied by Regina, low-key gaslit by Katie, taking care of her much stupider but much happier friend Karen, and in the musical, singing the most boring songs. With so little positives to latch onto in this reality, of course Gretchen breaks free from Lindsay Lohan's redhead magic more often than other characters. I think the Gretchen we see in this version is pretty close to self-awareness. Just like Mrs. Norbury's fourth wall-breaking moments, Gretchen seems confused as to where she got the word fetch, thinking it must be from an old movie but not remembering which one. And when they do become self-aware, Gretchens, not exactly being known for their backbones, probably slink off into the real, non-cyclical world and let the Mean Girl story continue to play itself out without them. All but one. The original Gretchen on Broadway was Ashley Park. You might recognize her as Mindy from Emily in Paris. I don't know what it is about her that says, I'd be best friends with a narcissist. But there you go. And you might have also spotted her as the French teacher in the new Mean Girls. Fun Easter egg? Or Gretchen gone rogue? Could it be that Madame Park, as she is credited, is a Gretchen that gained self-awareness but decided to stick around in order to try and break the cycle, to stop the torture of the Gretchens necessary for the triumph of the Katies? Notably, Madame Park seems to play the part of the strict teacher, but has moments where she reverts back to being a teen girl looking for validation. She appreciates Damon's Beyoncé reference before remembering that she shouldn't. And when Regina, who Gretchen of course has been a slave to, starts a new makeup trend, Madame Park can't help herself from joining in. And remember that Renee Rapp was also a Broadway Regina, so she's a Regina that Park's Gretchen would have been in the same loops with. So does she ever succeed in stopping the loop? It doesn't look like she does this time. In fact, the film ends with a transition from the school dance back to the garage where the movie started, implying that another loop is imminent. But I'm sure this isn't going to be the last entry in the Mean Girl franchise. Seems like a Mean Girls TV show would be a pretty safe bet for anyone's 2025 bingo cards. My 2024 bingo card is going pretty well, by the way. I had Mickey Mouse Horror on it, and that was announced January 1st. Do you guys think that Doja Cat's gonna vote Republican? I need to know for reasons. And you might be wondering, how does Mean Girls 2, the 2011 film that contains a whole new cast of characters, come into play in all this? I do not know. I did not watch it. Maybe it's what happens when Park actually manages to free everyone from the loop and Caddy just starts trying to cobble together something like her story with none of the original players. Tim Meadows actually is in Mean Girls 2 as Mr. Duvall, so maybe even after Park frees the others, he still doesn't become self-aware. Anyway, I'd love to know what you all think of this theory. Are there clues that I missed? Let me know. Think you know how the cycle ends? Let me know. Did you notice plot holes in this theory that make it completely unfeasible? Shut up. If you'd like to see more videos like this, remember to like and subscribe. And as always, have a delicious day. I know that doesn't have anything to do with Mean Girls, but I've decided it's my catchphrase. Deal with it.